time to enjoy the quiet moment on the last day of the summer camp.
Yes.
In the afternoon where people are taking off. I'm sitting here with Allison. We share an unusual feature. Our first names qualify us to the rare club of boy named Sue, between Johnny Cash's.
Boys named Sue. Yep.
So you gave a presentation 2 days ago, was it? On Monday.
Yeah, Monday afternoon.
Showing an unusual air filtering device. Was remarkably efficient, both in terms of the cost and the performance. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my background is physics. I have too many degrees in physics, including a PhD from the University of Florida. I left academia 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, but right before I left academia, I launched myself into a new career by building a house. I built the house out of structural insulated panels, and it was a very efficient house, a very comfortable house, the most comfortable house I've ever lived in. And I took that project on. I acted as the GC, the general contractor myself. I took on the project having never built anything bigger than a bookcase before that. So it was a big project.
Did you build it with your own two hands, or you use subcontractors?
I did a lot of the work myself. I hired contractors for some things, but for example, I hired some helpers to frame the house, to get the house, the structural insulated panels erected, the interior walls framed and everything, and the roof put on and everything dried in. And I had some other contractors come in. They installed the windows. Another contractor put the roofing on, and I subbed out the sheetrock. I was initially thinking I would do the sheetrock myself, and when I saw the guys that I hired in a day and a half put sheetrock in the whole house, I said, "Oh my God! I am so glad I did not try to do that myself. It would have taken me 2 months what they did in a day and a half."
Oh, that's remarkable. You convey kind of aristocratic, refined looks that what one doubt whether this guy could do anything with his own two hands in kind of blue collar reality. So that's and you mentioning it means that it was quite a significant experience in what you do professionally, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It launched me into this new career, and it took 2 years to build the house and move in, and I built it on the power of self-delusion, because for 2 years I was always What's that? Yep.
Let's look at so you look a little bit closer in the direction.
You want me to look at the camera? Mm-hmm. Okay. So for 2 years I was always 2 months out. In 2 months I'm going to be living in this house. In 2 months I'm going to be living in this house. And that lasted for 2 years. Finally, it did happen after 2 years. I got into the house and lived in it for 3 years. Then I got divorced, and that's a whole other story. But it was a wonderful house, very comfortable. I learned a lot in building it, but I also realized that there was a whole lot more I didn't know. I mean, I just scratched the surface of building science in building that house. I didn't know much of anything about mechanical systems. I did know that you needed a manual J load calculation to size it properly, and I hired a contractor and I told him I want a manual J. He did it. He gave me the reports, and it said we needed a 3-ton system. It was counting the unfinished but conditioned basement. It was about 3,000 square feet. So that's 1,000 square feet per ton, which is really good. But later, when I learned how to do load calculations myself, I repeated the load calculation, and it actually needed only about 1.5 tons of air conditioning, not 3 tons. Which I already knew even before I did the load calculation, because on a hot day, design day, I would watch how long the outdoor unit ran, and it didn't run very long. So I knew it was
That was a
oversized.
single stage.
Yep, a single stage heat pump. This was 20 years ago. And so yeah, I mean, I learned a lot in building that house, and then I learned a whole lot more afterwards. I got into, when I left academia, I got into the contracting world, so I did home performance contracting, going into people's houses and doing an assessment, blower door test, duct leakage test, then doing some of the work, the air sealing, duct sealing, insulation, crawl space encapsulation, a bunch of stuff like that. I did that, and then things kind of fell apart. My mom was dying and I got divorced. So that business fell apart. I went to work for another contractor in Atlanta. Learned a lot of stuff that I wish I had known in my contracting business, but that, you know, it was a good experience. And then I went to work for South Face. It's a nonprofit green building organization in Atlanta. And then in 2008 I left them and started my new business. Well, it's 14 years old now, but it's called Energy Vanguard. So I've been doing that since 2008.
Did I give you my card? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. Building Enclosure Institute, okay. So yeah.
How did you end up with summer camp?
Well, in 2010, I just got on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook like 2008, 2009. And in 2010, some people I knew were here at summer camp, and there was a lot of action on Twitter going on about summer camp. And I was following along, and on the last day of summer camp, I published an article in my blog. I mean, I just started the blog that year, and I wrote this article called, "I Don't Need No Stinkin' Building Science Summer Camp."
That was you.
That was me, yes. Yeah.
Right. For some reason I thought it was a woman.
No, that was me. That was me. Joe thought it was a woman too, because a couple of people here saw the article. The people I knew, and they passed it on to Joe and said, "Hey, Joe, read this." And Joe read it and said, "Oh, we should invite her." So that's how I got invited. So I've been coming since 2011. So this is my 10th summer camp. It would have been my 12th, but we missed 2 of them the last 2 years.
And is it the first time you presented?
No, second time. Yeah, in 2017, I did a presentation with another fellow on flex duct and duct design, which I was terrified to do. It was, you know, standing up in front of 450, 500 people and talking about a pretty technical topic with a bunch of people in there that I you know, some of whom I knew more than I did on the topic. But it went well. I got a lot of laughs, and we covered the topic well, and it was good. This time, I was not nearly so nervous. It was a less technical topic, and I've done it before, and I know the people better. So, yeah.
Well, it went remarkably well.
Good.
Thank you for the box.
Yes.
And do you realize how unique this group is?
Yes, I go to a lot of conferences. There's no other conference.
What kind of conferences?
Well, I've been to a lot of ASHRAE meetings, you know, big ASHRAE conferences, that's a different kind of conference completely. They have sessions where people give talks, and there's questions and answers afterward and stuff like that. And they also have a lot of committees that write standards, and so it's a working conference for all these committees. And mostly when I go to ASHRAE, I just go to the committee meetings. I go to the Home Performance Conference, the annual conference. I go to, I've been to one called the Dry Climate Forum in California. Even though I live in a humid climate, I occasionally go to the Dry Climate Forum. And that one is modeled after summer camp, but it's a smaller version. And they do it at Yosemite National Park. It's a great location, and it's similar, but it's not summer camp. What else? The Passive House Conference. I go to the FIAS Con I've been going to that since 2012.
So you stay within the mechanical realm, mechanical world, Ashra, energy, and
Anything that has to do with
HVAC.
mostly residential buildings, because my work is residential. So some of the stuff does residential and commercial. Like this conference, some of the talks are about commercial. Actually, we had a talk this week about fighting fires, wildfires, which was very interesting. So I mean, anything that has to do with buildings could be a good conference for me. This one covers residential and commercial. Residential is what I'm interested in mostly, but there's overlap, of course. And we do. I mean, the blog I write covers everything. I cover the building enclosure. I cover heating and cooling and ventilation and filtration, indoor air quality, thermal comfort, hot water systems, energy use, big picture energy use stuff, all kinds of things. And, whatever I want to write about, I can write about. It's my blog.
Thank you. Anything you think I should have asked and you have a ready answer for it?
Say that again?
Anything that you believe I missed in my questioning?
Well, you could ask me about my book.
Oh, you have a book. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay, tell me more about it.
I have a book coming out in October. My pandemic project has been writing a book. So almost 2.5, it'll be 2.5 years by the time it comes out. But I started writing a book in the spring of 2020. And the title is A House Needs to Breathe.
Of course, you mentioned that at your seminar, yes.
It's called A House Needs to Breathe.
A house needs to breathe.
No, wait. Let me finish. It's called A House Needs to Breathe. Or does it? Because the answer is no. A house does not need to breathe. And the reason...
The irony in the title.
Yes. The reason I titled it that way is because I have had a lot of builders, especially it seems like, are the worst on this, tell me that we shouldn't seal up a house too tight. A house needs to breathe, which is absolutely not true. We want a house sealed up as tight as possible, and then we want to bring in outdoor air through a mechanical ventilation system, and we want to pull that air from the best possible place outdoors. If you rely on random leaks, which is what you're saying if you say a house needs to breathe, what you're doing is you're pulling in air from the nasty crawl space with the mold and everything down there. You're pulling in that contaminated air from the garage. You're pulling in the dirty air from the attic, getting sucked through that dead squirrel sitting on the top plate. So a house does not need to breathe. It needs to have good indoor air quality. And the first step to good indoor air quality is air tightness. We want it as tight as possible.
That single sentence was worth the entire... That was precious.
Good.
Thank you for saying that. In the southeast Florida, this is particularly important, and you have so much latent load coming from outside.
Yes, I lived in Florida 9 years. I was born in Houston. I lived in South Louisiana, North Louisiana. I know humidity. I live in Atlanta now. People complain about the humidity in Atlanta, and I say, you've got to be kidding. Because, I mean, this summer's kind of bad. Our dew points are mostly in the 70s, but a lot of times in the summer, our dew points are in the mid to high 60s, which is not bad. We always get into the 70s. This summer, we're a lot in the 70s. In Florida, and up the Atlantic coast, anywhere along the Gulf Coast, your dew points hit 80 degrees and even into the 80s a little bit. That's really, really humid. That's nasty humid.
I know something about it.
Yep.
Thank you, Allison. Let me turn all this stuff off, unless you want to add something.
No,
Anything.
I'm good.